Hey, what's up? I'm Allie, and welcome back to my channel. I am back. For the new year. I feel kind of rusty right now because it's been a minute. I have all kinds of videos planned for the beginning of the new year, so, you know, I got there's this wrap up, I got my haul, and then I also have the best and the worst, as well as my stats, and a few other videos as well. So, I didn't really post any videos in December, but I'm gonna definitely make up for it in January. So, this is my December wrap-up. I'm probably going to be moving away from the monthly wrap-up format in 2021. I'm not too sure how it's going to work yet. I think I'm going to do wrap-ups based on the number of books that I'm reading. Basically, once I've reached a number of books that I feel like is a good enough number for a wrap-up, whether that's 5 or 10, I'm unsure at this moment. But I just want to test out something different. I don't really like the deadline feeling of monthly wrap-ups, and sometimes, you know, sometimes I have 2 things to talk about and sometimes I have like 20. And I just, you know, I just want to be a little more spread out so then I can focus on having better reviews instead of worrying about how long a wrap-up is necessarily and then having to worry about editing a really long wrap-up. So there's a lot of other factors behind it, but we're going to try it out for this year, and if it doesn't work, then, you know, I can always go back. So this is my last wrap-up for 2020. This is my December wrap-up. Technically, I think I read about 7 things, but I'm only going to be talking about 4, 5 of them. I did already talk about 2 of the books in my November wrap-up, which they were Christmassy time books, so I wanted to talk about those so you guys could decide if you wanted to read them. That was In a Holidays and A Christmas Date, so if you're interested in the reviews of those, they are in my previous wrap-up. Okay, as always, there will be timestamps listed down below, so if you are looking for any particular book, you can just skip to it. So let's go ahead and get into this. The majority of my reading, I feel like, in the past year happened because of audiobooks, so I was really looking for a really interesting audiobook. I kind of have just been in a really slumpy mood for like a month now, so I was just looking for something that was really interesting, and one that's been on my TBR and had a lot of hype around it was No Exit. I thought this was the perfect time because this is a thriller that is set in basically a blizzard, and it just so happened that whenever I was reading it, we also had quite the snowstorm here. This is about a woman who gets stuck in a blizzard, and she gets stuck at this visitor center. I can't remember the total number of strangers. It might be 4 strangers. She's there with 4 strangers, and she goes out to her car to get something, and whenever she's checking out her car, she realizes that the car beside her actually has a child in a cage in the back. So one of these strangers that she is stuck there with is actually a kidnapper. I thought there was going to be, I feel like this has been so hyped that there's no way it could have lived up to the hype for me, and I definitely felt that. I also felt like a lot of people had kind of spun it that this was going to be a mystery, and I think even the synopsis kind of spins it like it is going to be a mystery, but you know pretty much off the bat what you know, who the person is. So there isn't really a mystery there. I'm not going to say who. You figure it out really quickly. There's like no doubt about it, but it was, you know, I thought there'd be a little bit more mystery behind it because I tend to like the more mystery aspect. I wanna figure out who done did it. So I will say that there were a lot of twists in this. Like every time I was like, nothing else could possibly happen, something else happens, and I was just constantly on the edge of my seat. Like, what else could possibly happen? And it's like bad thing after bad thing after bad thing after bad thing after bad thing. And even in those moments when you are finally rested and you're like, okay, we got this, we're on a good path. No, don't trust it. Don't trust it, because it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna hurt you, it's gonna hurt them, it's gonna hurt everyone. I did think that this did the plot twist pretty well. There were some subplot things happening in the story that personally I didn't feel like added anything. I think it was trying to make the main character more interesting and give her more of a personality and give her more of a life, but it was just weird. And I personally didn't think that it fit in with the narrative that they were trying to cast her as. Like, one moment she is like this outcast, kind of self-centered woman, and then in the next moment she's this, you know, hero, and she's very selfless. Like, personality that the backstory was kind of giving her and the subplot story was giving her was a very different character than the character that you're actually following. And I guess you could say it was character development, but there's no development in between there. It was just, I don't know. So that felt a little off at times, and I really just could have done without the subplot. There's also a subplot to some of the other characters, and honestly, I don't know. It felt icky at times because I do think that this might have some poor mental health representation. So, you know, go into that a little leery. I personally just thought that it was trying to use that as a plot thing to kind of spell out a bad character, and I just wasn't. I'm not here for that kind of stuff, okay? Mental illness does not make you a villain. I do think that they were trying to show that to some degree and show a little bit of how easily people can be manipulated, but I just personally just felt a little weird about it, okay? So, I will say overall I ended up enjoying this. I mean, it was very suspenseful, as it should have been, and even though I did feel a little misled and there were some things that I felt a little nitpicky about, I did give it a 4 stars. I did think it was a very enjoyable read. I thought it was really great for the winter time, so it was more hyped than I feel like it probably should have been, and it was good. It was a good time. The next thing that I ended up reading, I'm actually just going to combine these because that is Giant Days Volume 12 and 13. I do believe there's only one more volume left, so I'm just like holding off on that one. But Giant Days is a graphic novel series, and it follows 3 women as they are in university, and it follows their different personalities, but also their friendship and the different struggles that they go through with school and work and relationships and other friendships and other things going on, and it's just a really fun and relatable series. I just love kind of, it's one of those series that I just feel like I can just like unwind with because it's not something that I have to seriously follow. I will say that obviously there are histories that get built up over, because this takes place over their university years, but I felt like I could just jump back in. It has been almost a year since the last time I read one of these, so I felt like I could easily jump back in and kind of figure out where things had left off and kind of just keep going. So I ended up giving both these 4 stars. It's just a really enjoyable series. Obviously, as graphic novel series go on, I feel like they do get a little repetitive, especially when this is something that's just following like day-to-day life. So they're not like perfect, but they're still really fun and I really enjoyed them. I made a list of all the books that I wanted to read by the end of January, and it's a very long list, and I'm just like, what am I doing? But one of the books that I've been really meaning to read for all of 2020, and I just knew that I had to do it before the year ended, was The Secret History. I've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. I am a total hoe for dark academia, and all the more modern popular titles, they tend to be my favorites. If We Were Villains is my all-time favorite book, and I know that a lot of people say, you know, like the dark history. The Secret History is kind of like the godmother of dark academia. I feel like it's on all the lists of like you have to read. It's, you know, it's like the staple dark academia book. I think I have been putting it off for so long because I'm like terrified that it would disappoint, you know, things like that. I think we kind of get these ideas in our head, something's just going to be so perfect, and then you get there and it's not, and that's kind of what happened. So I jinxed myself. It starts out, one of the characters is dead. They know he's dead. They know all about it. A good portion, the first portion of the book is about the events leading up to this character's death. And we follow the main character, who I cannot recall the name for Richard. We follow Richard. Yeah, we follow Richard, and he is kind of like a nobody, and he comes from a poor background, and he ends up at this school, and he's really into Greek, but the Greek class is very hard to get into. It's a very selective amount of students, and the students are very pretentious, to say the least. They are very rich and kind of have their own ideals about the world and the things, you know, they just have this air about them that is much different and more superior than their other students. The first portion of this book is leading up to how this character has died and the weird things that are going on with this group. Basically, Richard is not really in the know, but he knows something is up. And then the last portion of the book is kind of like the aftermath of that. And now Richard is in the know and he's part of some things and weird stuff is happening. I think I was just expecting a little bit more, one, of mystery, and I just felt like the students overall, they had that pretentious feel about them, which tends to happen with Dark Academia, and there is like the personal dramas between them, which is something that I love about Dark Academia. It's just the different dramas between the group and the relationships and how everyone's connected and all that jazz and all the weird stuff that they're doing. There's some weird stuff going on here, and I was interested in that. However, we don't really focus on a lot of the weird stuff happening, which is what I tend to like Dark Academia for. I want to know more about the weird stuff going on. We don't really get to talk about much about their like mythology studies, Greek studies, any of that. We don't really get to see into the things that they're doing, the dark things that they're doing. It's definitely more focused on Richard's life, just overall. Like, he gets to hear about the nitty-gritty things about his life, and then getting to know these characters. That being said, I felt like the characters just felt weird at times. Like, they just didn't make sense. And that they're these pretentious, and, you know, you're thinking, like, the best of the best, and they're supposed to be so smart and all this other stuff. And then they know, like, nothing of the real world. They live in these imaginary worlds, which I guess is part of the plot, but it was just, like, unbelievable at times, because I would think students of that caliber would have some interest in the things happening around them. It was weird to me that, like, none of them did. It was just very bizarre to me. Another thing is that I feel like 200 pages of this probably could have been cut, because I did really love these characters. I do think that Donna Tartt did a good job making these characters very different, and I don't know if I'm going to say I was in love with these characters, but I did really respect these characters. So I think that she did a really good job at that. And the first portion of this, when leading up to the death, I thought did a really good job of making me connect more with these characters, even though Richard isn't that close with them. So the last portion of this just was like so distracting with the details and the details and the details and the details of just their lives going on. And I just was like, so much of this could have been cut out, because I just felt like there was a good amount of it that just didn't really do anything for the plot. It wasn't leading me to anything. It wasn't overexciting. It was just very mundane and kind of repetitive at times. And honestly, I felt like it was distracting from the main kind of big wabam that ends up happening at the end. It was just distracting, because up to that point I was just like glazed over at all the things going on. And then once we get into the interesting part, I was like, oh, that's happening. I actually had to go back and re-listen to the exciting part like 3 times, because I was like, something happened? Something happened? Ending was a little cliche. I don't really know how to say that, just as someone who's read a lot of like murder mystery type things. I felt like the ending felt kind of cliche in a way, so I don't know. Just me, I can see why it was an overall inspiration, but at the end of the day, I just felt like it was a little too long, a little too dragged out, and some things just weren't super cohesive in the long run. I just wanted to learn more about the things that they were doing and their motivation to do these things, because it's never really fully expressed, the motivation, just that, like, this seems like a cool thing to do. The things that they were doing seemed like there should have been more motivation besides just, this is a cool thing to do. So I ended up giving this a 4 stars. I'm thinking that might be generous, just because looking back on it, I just don't feel as impressed as I should have, but we'll see. I'm still sitting on it. It's up between like a 3.5 and a 4. So if that helps you in any way, there you go. I need a drink after all that. And we get into my last read of the year, and this is why I just do not trust the best of the best kind of videos before the end of the year. Like, before January, whenever people do that, it stresses me out. I get why they do it, but it still stresses me out. I read a book on December 31st with like 1 hour left in the year, and I loved it. It was a 5-star read, and it was just so spectacular, and it was just, I gotta talk to you about it. So it will probably be in my best video, which if I had done it before now, it wouldn't have made it. Just stresses me out. Anyway, the book is The Black God's Drums, and this has been on my TBR for a while. It is relatively short. The audiobook was only about like 3 hours, hence why I was able to fit it in on the last day. Wait, I read something else yesterday. What else did I read? Wow, I just forgot that I was like, that I finished 2 books yesterday. Okay, well, we'll talk about that one after this one, I guess. Anyway, that is The Black God's Drums. This is a sci-fi, historical, kind of alternate reality steampunk story. It follows a really young girl. It's an alternative history after... It's not really after the Civil War. A truce has been called during the Civil War and life has kind of gone on. It takes place in New Orleans and it is based around like different mythology. I do believe it's Caribbean mythology, but I might be wrong on that. I do think the narrator did a really fantastic job of putting out different accents for the story, and this just had so much packed into it for being such a short story. We follow a really young girl who is kind of living on the streets, and she is a pickpocketer, and she comes across some very interesting information. The Confederates are getting a hold of the Black God's drums. And this is part of the mythology. She has a goddess watching over her, and she knows of a captain of an airship who might want this information. So she ends up tracking down this captain, and of course, you know, things progress from there, and they want to go and stop the Confederates from getting the Black God's drums. This was so enthralling. I basically sat there for the 3 hours that I listened to it, like staring at the wall. Like, this is so good. This is so interesting. It is just so imaginative. It's also, I felt like it had a lot of really great historical details mixed in. I just love the overall atmosphere of it. I just love that the main character was a much younger girl, and at times she felt that way, but she wasn't always super naive because she's lived in rougher conditions. It was just so good. I loved the mix of like mythology with kind of wartime, with just the steampunk atmosphere, and it just was so great. The writing was fantastic. I'm definitely going to be checking out more of this author's work. So fantastic. I would highly recommend it, especially if you're looking for just a really quick read. I thought it was just really fast-paced. It was really engrossing. It just was informative in a way. Like, it was just so good. I actually had to take a moment and like look into it because I was like, wait a minute, did this happen? Like, I was so confused, and then I realized it was an alternative history because I was like, what? Okay, and then the book that I totally forgot that I also finished yesterday is The Sea of Lost Girls. As you can tell, it's probably not going to be super highly rated since I immediately forgot that I read it. I actually started this book, I believe, back in March, and just now re-picked it up. I believe at the time, the beginning of it is a little slow, and it felt kind of predictable at the time, and I just was like, I'm not feeling this. I'm not here for it. It follows this woman who is a teacher, and one of her students ends up being found dead, and her son just happened to have a fight with this girl and was found near the scene, and then her husband is also a suspect in it as well. Well, there's also a dark history behind the school with girls going missing, so there's more to it than that, and this is about digging into what happened to this girl, but also what has happened in the history of the school and who has done all the terrible deeds. So, like, where are these lost girls? You also get more of a look into the main character's life, and she was also considered kind of a lost girl for some point in time, and you learn more about that. So at the beginning of this, I was like, yeah, okay, I guess we kind of know where this is going, pretty predictable, so I kind of set it down. I repicked it up, and I just kind of was like, you know, okay, yeah, whatever. And then we get into more of the aspects of her life and how that ties into the school, and I was like, oh, you're not a trustworthy bitch, huh? So it is a little bit, I guess, of a psychological kind of thing because our narrator cannot be trusted she is a liar through and through. So just when I thought I would have things figured out, she'd come forward with a new truth and I'd be like, how many things are you hiding here? So that was probably the most interesting aspect of it. I did like kind of figuring out what had happened to these lost girls, hearing a little bit about their stories. This does, I think, focus heavily on her personal life more than anything. So, like, we're looking at this girl's murder, and then we're on to the main character's personal life. And then we're on that for a really long time, and then we get back into the murder. So, I don't think there was a great balance of the original storyline with this, but I did think that all these characters' backstories were interesting. The backstory of the school was interesting and things like that. Like, they definitely kept it going. I did feel like at the end, everyone kind of got what was coming to them, which is good, but at the same time, I did still feel like it was pretty predictable, in my opinion. This does, I feel like, in a way, the main focus of this book, it's pedophilia, basically. So it is about teachers having relations with students and sexually assaulting students and things like that. That is the whole premise of the book. Every backstory deals with it. So I felt like in a way it was kind of glorifying it at the same time that it was saying it was bad. It was very confusing at times because, like, the main character seems like she has conflicting views about it as well, which you see why, but it was just like I just felt kind of weird about it. Like, and I do think it was trying to make some sort of social statement about the issue at hand, but I don't think that it did a super great job at it. It probably should have just focused more on, solving the mystery at hand. So, I think I'm going to end up giving this a 3 stars. I didn't think it was terribly bad. I didn't think it was great, but it was enjoyable for the most part. I think it just wasn't for me. I just felt like things were just convenient. It's how the story plays out. Like, the people that are in play just felt too convenient at times. So, and I do think the ending was just kind of like, this character that you build up to be one way and then just turn around and make them a whole different. I didn't like that. I just felt like it was inconsistent as well. So, that is it. I can't believe I just totally forgot that I had read the whole other book. Friends, my memory is gone. I have no memory anymore. I spent an hour looking for a hat this morning that I could not figure out, and I still don't know where it's at, so it's gone. Memory's gone. That's it for my December wrap-up. I hope that you guys have liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to see future wrap-ups from me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!